So you want to get aesthetic. You're probably not in the best shape of your life right now. You're probably in between 15 to 30 years old. If you're not in those ages, that's fine. You can also watch this video. But in this video, I'm basically going to explain to you how you can actually become aesthetic. And it's a lot more simpler than you think. A lot of people make out becoming aesthetic as this very hard due process. It's not as hard as you think it is, and you have to follow very simple steps to it. Actually becoming aesthetic is following the simple steps consistently. So you're currently in one of the three body shapes. You're either extremely skinny, so you don't have a lot of muscle mass. You're either skinny fat, so you have low muscle mass and a high fat percentage, so you have skinny arms and you have some fat in your belly area. Or you are just overweight and you don't have a lot of muscle mass, but you have an extremely high percentage of fat mass. You are definitely in one of these stages right now. Or you just started out your fitness journey and you're not exactly sure how to get to that point where your physique looks aesthetic, how to actually get to that point where you're starting to make consistent progress every single week, every single month, and so on. So a little bit about me. When I first started training, I thought I had bad genetics. So within the first 3 months or so, I kind of gave up training because I just thought I wasn't making any progress. Then after about 2 to 3 months of consistent progress, this is what I looked like. And I actually started to see some progress after I started making changes, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what I did. So quickly, what I'm gonna go through is I'm gonna go through what makes an aesthetic physique. Why do people think your physique is aesthetic? How exactly are you going to be training and eating to get an aesthetic physique? Okay, so what makes an aesthetic physique? To me, an aesthetic physique is big shoulders, big chest, wide upper back, and a good shoulder to waist ratio. Now, genetically, I have quite a wide waist, so I'm forced to grow bigger shoulders. This will be the same for you. If you have a wide waist, you're going to have to build bigger shoulders if you want your physique to have that kind of V-line symmetry. If you don't have a wide waist, you're lucky you have very good genetics and you have a slim waist. You don't need to work as hard in order to build that V-line taper because you already have that taper. Along with big shoulders, big chest, and a wide upper back, you want a high muscle mass percentage and you'd want a low fat mass percentage. So when you are trying to build an aesthetic physique, what I wouldn't recommend is going on an extremely strong bulk. What I mean by a strong bulk is where you put on a bunch of fat and then you cut away that fat to see the physique underneath. I've never done a full-on bulk. I've only ever lean bulked or stayed at the weight that I was and continued to build on muscle, which is what I'm gonna recommend to you as well, because we don't wanna get fat, first of all. We wanna be able to see our muscles whilst we're building the muscle. Now, before we get into the detailed grit of how we're gonna do this, I'm gonna tell you 3 myths that you probably believe that you need to get out of your head right now. Otherwise, it's gonna be hard for you to see progress. So the first one, as we touched on just now, is that you need to bulk to put on muscle. You don't need to do a bulk. As you can see, this is how I look like before, and this is how I look like now. I've only lean bulked or stayed at maintenance, and I've still been able to put on muscle whilst losing fat, and I've gotten bigger in this process. I have never bulked. You don't need to bulk either, as long as you're doing everything correctly and as long as you listen to what I have to say. The second myth is that it's only genetics. Whilst your genetics do play a huge role in how much muscle you can build, how good you kind of look, your genetics are not an end factor or the main factor to how much progress you're going to be able to see, how much muscle you're going to be able to build, and how aesthetic your physique is going to look. For example, like me, in my chest genetics, I have a split in the middle of my chest, whereas someone like Arnold has a full, well-rounded chest, and that makes their physique just looks amazing. I also genetically have quite big shoulders, a big waist. I have very good abs, although I don't really ever train my abs. So if you've been training for a couple of months now and you're not really seeing progress, chances are you're doing something wrong. You can't just blame it on your genetics and expect to see results. And the last myth, you probably believe this one because it goes around the fitness industry a lot. You can get too big or you can get too bulky. That's not possible. You can't get too bulky. Even if you try to get too bulky, it wouldn't happen. Okay, getting too bulky is a process that goes over years. Okay, I can't get too bulky. Why do you think you are going to be able to get too bulky? The way your physique looks is determined by how much food you're eating and your training, of course, but the size of your physique is determined by what you're eating and how much of it you're eating. So if you're gonna decide to go on a huge bulk over the course of 4 years, then yes, you're gonna get too big. But if you just dial it down and just eat around the 300 calorie surplus, you're not gonna get too big. You're gonna build a good amount of muscle and you're gonna lose a good amount of fat. How often should you be training? How often do I train? Let's talk about it. So I follow a PPL x Arnold program. So I try to train about 6 days a week. This is not consistent, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes life gets in the way, work gets in the way, and I'm not able to get that 6 days a week in. Now, the reason that I run a PPL x Arnold program is because when I first started training, I was on a PPL program. And whilst my chest and my back was growing, my arms were lacking in my physique, as you can see on the screen now. My arms were lacking, so I decided to add an arm day in through the PPL x Arnold program. So if you don't know what the PPL x Arnold program is, it's a push, it's a pull, legs, it's a rest. then you do chest and back, arms and shoulders and legs. Now, I feel like if you really want an aesthetic physique, you need to have an arms and shoulders day, because your arms will always just lack if you're never able to fully target them. However, this might just be genetics. It's hard for me to grow my biceps, it's hard for me to grow my triceps. Okay, it might be different for you. You could grow your arms with just 4 days a week. So if you don't want to follow a 6-day split because you may not have the time to, you can't be bothered to, or you just don't want to for any particular reason, you can do a split that suits you. Any split, to be honest, where you're training your muscle group 2 times a week is gonna work for you. There are so many types of programs that are suitable to everyone's needs. There's 3-day splits, 4-day splits, 5-day splits, 6-day splits, even 7-day splits. I don't know why you'd go on a 7-day split. 4 days a week is the minimum amount of sessions you should be doing a week. So yeah, there's no specific amount of days that you need to train for, as long as it's a minimum of 4 days and probably a maximum of 6 days. Find a split that suits your daily schedule, your daily life, your weekly life, sorry, and stay consistent with that split. I've created a peak aesthetics muscle sculpting program that's in the link in the description below, which is going to help you to build an aesthetic physique, and it's the exact program that I used when I first started training that got me such a good amount of progress in such a short amount of time. So if you want to get that for yourself, check the link in the description below. Okay, now reps and sets. When you're actually training, how many reps and sets should you be doing? Now, here's how I do it. For my compound lifts, so lifts that involve more than one muscle group, for example, your bench press, standing military press, squats, dumbbell press, incline Smith machine press, things like that. I usually go in a lower rep range of about 5 to 8 reps. You don't have to do this. This is my personal preference. You might have a different personal preference where you want to go in a higher rep range, which is completely fine. So for me, my compound movements are in the lower rep range, and my isolation exercises where I'm only working one muscle group. So for example, lateral raises, bicep curls, tricep push downs, I will go in a higher rep range because I'm able to get that mind to muscle connection a lot more. And for me, a higher rep range would be in between 10 to 12, 12 to 15 reps. Now I do need to say, any rep range between 5 to 30 reps to failure is going to build you muscle. So if you wanted to do 15 reps for every single exercise, and that last 15 rep is the hardest rep of the exercise and you can't get it up, you can do that and you're still going to build muscle. If you wanted to do 6 reps for every single exercise, and that 6th rep is hard, like it's a failure rep, you're going to build muscle. There's no specific rep range that is going to build you the most amount of muscle. As long as you're taking your exercises to failure in between the 5 to 30 rep range, you will build muscle. And as long as you're progressively overloading as well. Now the sets and structuring your workouts. How many sets should you be doing and how do you actually structure your workouts? So for your sets, you're gonna be doing about 3 to 4 sets per exercise, and you wanna be taking about 2 to 3 of them until failure. You shouldn't really be doing more than 4 sets per exercise. A sweet spot for me is 3 sets per exercise. That's where you can get the most growth from, and that's where you don't have to be overtraining. Now in terms of structuring your workouts, what you wanna be doing in your workouts is you don't wanna overtrain each muscle group. So each muscle group is split into smaller muscle groups. So for example, your shoulders is not just your shoulders. It's your front delt, it's your side delt, and it's your rear delt. Your chest is not just your chest. You have your upper chest, you have your middle part of your chest, and you have the lower chest. That's not the scientific terms, but that's just, let me just go off of that for now. So you're gonna do 1 exercise per each part of your chest. You're gonna do 1 exercise per each part of your shoulder. Same with your back. There's multiple muscles in your back. What you don't wanna do now is do 2 upper chest exercises, 2 lower chest exercises, 2 middle chest exercises, and call it a day. You don't need, that's way too much. You're gonna be overtraining, you won't be able to recover quickly, and you won't be able to progressively overload in your lifts. So I'm gonna take you through a quick little push day so that you understand how to structure this. For example, a push day is chest, shoulders, and triceps. So here's how my push day would go. So either a flat bench press or a flat dumbbell press. I do that for 3 sets in the 5 to 8 rep range. I move on to an upper chest exercise, for example, an incline Smith machine press or an incline dumbbell press. Then I move on to a lower chest exercise, so for example, weighted dips or decline cable flies. These are all in relation to the previous reps and sets that I mentioned before with compounds and isolation exercises. Then I move on to my shoulders. I do 2 shoulder exercises because I leave my rear delts for my back day. So I do 2 shoulder exercises, a front delt press and a lateral raise for my side delt. Then tricep exercises. I do a tricep movement where my elbows are over my head, and I do a tricep movement where my elbows are tucked down to my side so that I can target both parts of my tricep. As you can see, I've hit every single muscle of my push muscles. Now, the diet, the protein and the calories that you need in order to actually have an aesthetic physique, in order to look aesthetic. Protein is very simple and it does not need to be overcomplicated. Let me just break it down for you very, very simply. If you weigh yourself in pounds, you need about 0.8 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you weigh yourself in kilograms, you need about 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Let me break it down for you even more if you don't understand. So I weigh 87 kg, meaning I need to have let's just say I need to have roughly 180 grams of protein per day. That's my protein goal. If you weigh, for example, 70 kg, you need to have around 140 grams of protein per day. Now, how much food should you actually be eating? Okay, so the amount of food that you eat and the food that you actually eat is going to be affecting how you look and how you feel as well. And if you want to become aesthetic, to be aesthetic, you need to have a low fat percentage. So you don't want to gain too much fat. And the way that you're going to do this is you're going to eat close to maintenance calories. So you're going to be eating in a 200 calorie surplus. As I said in the beginning of the video, you're probably watching this video with one of the three body types: skinny, skinny fat, or overweight. So if you're extremely skinny with a low fat percentage and a low muscle percentage, you do need to go on a little bulk for a little while. Now, I'm not saying that you need to put on a huge amount of fat. You just need to put on some size, you need to put on some weight. If you're skinny, you need to go on about a 3 to 500 calorie surplus. If you're skinny fat, meaning that you have a high fat percentage and you have a low muscle percentage, what you need to try and do is try to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. It might seem difficult, but it's not as difficult as you think. That's called a body recomposition, but I'm not going to talk to you deeply on how to do that body recomp. I'm simply going to tell you your calories. So if you're skinny fat, you need to be eating at maintenance calories. If you're overweight, you need to cut the fat that you currently have whilst trying to build some muscle. And then once you've cut all that fat, you can focus on just building muscle. So if you're overweight, you need to go in a calorie deficit. So you don't want to be at maintenance or in a surplus. You want to go in a calorie deficit of about 3 to 500 calories. How exactly do you find out what your calories are? You go to this website here called tdeecalculator.com or .net, one of them, enter your details and it will give you a number, and you need to use that number until you start to see progress. Now, what food should you actually be eating and how often should you be eating? I recommend 3 meals a day. If you're a beginner, 3 meals a day is like the sweet spot where you can eat a good amount of food and you're not getting too full and you're not staying hungry either. You want to be eating very nutrient dense sources and very high protein sources. Red meat, chicken thighs, fish, peanut butter, Greek yogurt. Those are 5 of the best sources of protein that I've come across. You want to be spreading your protein goal out throughout the day. So for example, in the morning, you might want to have 4 eggs, some oats and a bit of peanut butter. And for lunch, you're going to have some chicken thighs and rice. And then for dinner, you might have some beef burgers or something like that. Now, your diet should be a very balanced diet of proteins, carbs, and fats. You want to be drinking a good amount of water every day as well, about 2 to 4 liters, depending on how big you are, how much you weigh. And I'm going to briefly mention this because you already know this. You need to be getting a good amount of sleep per night, 7 to 9 hours. It's good for your recovery and for muscle growth as well. And don't think of sleep as one of the least important factors. If anything, it's one of the most important factors. So briefly, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that's all you need to know. And that's pretty much everything, guys. Getting an aesthetic physique is not as hard as you think. It's pretty simple once you've understood the basics and you've got that first couple months of consistency going, okay? So if you find it hard in the first month, in the second month, in the third month, just understand, after those 3 months, after those 4 months, everything is just gonna become like second nature to you. So stay consistent, don't give up in the first few weeks or in the first few months. Stay consistent with it because you are going to see progress. I promise you that. If you follow the advice that I just gave you. Aesthetic body that you dream of having is not as far away as you think it is. If anything, it could be a year away. And the only thing that's stopping you from your current physique to that physique is the actions that you complete. And I'm gonna briefly mention this. Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man how to fish, he eats for life, okay? So I've created the program that you actually need in order to become aesthetic, in order to get an aesthetic physique. And that's linked in the description below. I'm trying to sell you a $500 course. It's a very cheap program and I've spent quite a lot of time on it. If you guys have any questions whatsoever on how to get an aesthetic physique, how to optimize your health, anything to do with self-improvement or fitness or anything that I mentioned in this video, make sure you drop a comment down below and also comment down what you think of this video, what you think of this channel. You know, I'm a new up and coming channel, so let me know what you think. Comment down below and I will respond to your comment. Apart from that, guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope that you get aesthetic one day. I hope that you build the perfect, the most aesthetic, the most dream physique that you've ever dreamt of having one day, which you will, right? Make sure you subscribe. Mwah.